Hello and welcome to Before the Launch. I am your host, Brenna McGowan, and today I am answering a question that one of my email subscribers, Charlotte, sent in. And I think it's a really great question and super important for your pre launch. So if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm going to look down and read the question. Her question was around podcasting and pre launch. How would you decide what to talk about during your pre launch on that podcast? When would you actually make the pitch? And how would you use a podcast in your pre-launch? Such a great question. And we're going to start with the last one first, which was how would I use a podcast during a pre-launch? I look at podcasting, live videos, YouTube videos, anything where people can hear you or see you, including a podcast. I look at that as pillar content for the week during a pre-launch. So what we're going to do and what I recommend my students do is to really think about a podcast first and think about the themes of the week. So if you go back, I believe it was episode 2, we'll link it here in the show notes for you, where I talk about the themes of your pre-launch. So I would go back, I would look at the themes, the weekly themes for my pre-launch, and then I would decide what my podcast episodes are going to be based on those themes. So, for example, the pre-launch plan program, if I was going to, and I will be, by the way, coming in September, the full program will be coming out. But if I was going to actually record a podcast that with a pre-launch episode, I would record an episode, let's say if it is objection week. I would think about what are the main objections to a pre-launch? Well, one of the main objections to a pre-launch that I get is that a pre-launch takes too much time, that a pre-launch is extra work. So I would record an episode that would actually talk about why a pre-launch is not more work, why a pre-launch actually is less work when you do it right. So I would create an episode based on that idea. So I would be using the podcast once again as like pillar content. I would be able to go through to create emails off of that particular podcast, send people to the podcast to listen to. I always say that people need to hear you or see you during pre-launch. So I would be sending traffic from my email list from Instagram to go and actually listen to that podcast episode. I may pick up little sound bites based off of that particular episode that I would do into an Instagram post or a reel. I may do a carousel where I walk through step by step the theme of that particular week's podcast. But podcasting during or any type of content where people hear you or see you is extremely important, especially in 2025 when we are in the trust recession, as we've talked about before on this podcast, that people aren't as trusting, especially with AI. When people can hear you, see you, it just makes a difference and creates trust so much faster. And then when you can be really smart and strategic with your content about what people are hearing and seeing before you put the offer in front of them, where you are making sure that they feel seen, heard, understood, that you are helping them overcome myths that they believe about themselves, about your industry, when you're dealing with objections around the idea or the method behind your program, when you start to future pace them, when you do all of this on a podcast, it gets people mentally prepped for your offer. Okay, and so how would I decide what to talk about before I pitch? And that's exactly what I show my students, how I help my clients. We go through this exact process of, okay, what are the things that people need to hear, see, and believe before they're ready to buy from me? I'll repeat that because it's really important. What do people need to hear, see, and believe before they are ready to buy from me? That is the topics of your podcast for that 4 to 6 weeks, even longer, before you actually launch. The last question is, when would I pitch? Well, it depends. I always say that pre-launch is for selling your process, not your program. I would not be making a formal pitch until my doors opened. However, 2 things here I want you to keep in mind. That doesn't mean that you can't, A, create a pre-sale campaign where you're getting people in early, where you are putting out like some type of bonus or early bird offer when people decide to join you early. However, I'm looking at as more of a pre-sale, or I'm sorry, more of a soft sale than I am a hard pitch. That's the first thing. The second thing is just mentioning your offer ahead of time does so much heavy lifting for you. I think we forget sometimes how busy people are, how inundated with information they are, how maybe they're a little bit more strapped in terms of cash. And so when we just simply say, and I kind of did it here if you heard me, if you just give people a precursor like, hey, I'm going to be opening this thing up in, 6 weeks, a month. I just want you to know about it in case you feel like it's right for you. So definitely be mentioning when your offer is going to actually open so that people can prep their minds and their wallets for your offer. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week here on Before the Lunch.